The fire crackled in the stone hearth, casting shadows that danced across the rough-hewn walls of the Montana cabin. Outside, December wind howled through the pines, carrying with it the promise of another hard winter. Inside, warmth. Inside, the weight of memory. Nathaniel Bishop sat in his chair, the same chair he had built 30 years prior with his own calloused hands. At 64, his hair had gone silver, but his back remained straight. His beard, once the color of autumn leaves, now matched the snow accumulating on the windowsill. Deep lines framed his gray eyes, each one a map of survival, of loss, of choices that could not be unmade. Across from him, 12-year-old Daniel watched the old man with the intensity of youth seeking wisdom. The boy's father, Nathaniel's only son, had died at Normandy 7 years past. The telegram had arrived on a Tuesday. Nathaniel had read it once, folded it carefully, and placed it in the drawer where he kept important documents. He had not opened that drawer since. Now the boy lived here in this cabin, perched 8,000 feet above a world that had forgotten how to be quiet. Daniel was small for his age, dark-haired like his father, but with his grandmother's eyes. Those eyes held questions that deserved answers. On the table between them lay a photograph, brown with age, the edges soft from handling. A woman in the habit of a Catholic nun stared out from the frame, her face young and pale, her eyes holding something the camera could not quite capture. Fear, perhaps, or defiance, or both. Daniel had found it that morning, tucked inside an old Bible on the shelf. He had asked the question all children eventually ask when they discover their elders had lives before memory. Who is this? Nathaniel had not answered immediately. He had taken the photograph, held it to the firelight, and for a long moment said nothing. The silence stretched until it became something tangible, something the boy could feel pressing against his chest. Finally, the old man spoke. "Your grandmother," he said. His voice was rough, unused to lengthy conversation. "Taken in 1887, before the world tried to kill us both." Daniel leaned forward. "Dad never talked about her. Nobody did. I thought she died when Dad was born." "No." Nathaniel set the photograph down carefully, as though it might shatter. "She lived still, though in town now, at the clinic. You have met her, though you were too young to remember. She came when your father was buried. Why do not you live together?" "We do, in all the ways that matter. But she has work, people who need her, and I have this mountain." He paused. "And now I have you." The boy studied the photograph again. "She was a nun?" "Was, long ago, before I found her dying in the snow." Daniel's eyes widened. "You saved her?" "No." Nathaniel's gaze drifted to the window, to the darkness beyond. "I gave her a choice. There is a difference." The wind gusted, rattling the shutters. The fire popped, sending sparks up the chimney. Outside, a wolf howled, distant and lonesome. Its mate answered from another ridge. Always they found each other, even in the dark. "Tell me," Daniel said. "Please. Dad died not knowing. I do not want to die not knowing." Nathaniel looked at the boy, saw in him both his dead son and something else. Courage, maybe. The kind that asks questions when silence would be easier. He thought of Jacob Freeman, dead these 30 years, who had understood that some stories must be told, or they rot inside you like old meat. "Very well," he said, "but first you must promise me something. Anything. Do not ever let others define what is forbidden for you. They will call kindness weakness. They will call courage madness. They will call love sin when it does not serve their purposes. You must decide for yourself what is right, not what is easy, not what is safe, what is right." Daniel nodded slowly, sensing the weight of this oath. Nathaniel rose, moving to the window. Beyond the glass, snow had begun to fall, thick and heavy. He could see nothing but white, but in his mind's eye he saw another storm, another night, 30 years and a lifetime ago. "It began in October of 1887, he said. "I was 39 years old. I had been alone for 6 years, ever since Sarah died. Ever since I buried her and our son on the ridge above this cabin. For 6 years, I spoke to no one but the mountain and the Blackfoot people who sometimes traded with me. For 6 years, I was a ghost. Then I found her. Or perhaps she found me. Perhaps God, if he exists, arranged the whole thing just to prove a point." He turned back to face the boy. "This story is not easy to hear, Daniel. It is about cruelty. It is about men who use power like a weapon. It is about a woman who refused to die when the world told her she must. And it is about what people call forbidden when what they really mean is inconvenient. I can handle it, Daniel said. I am not a child. Nathaniel studied him for a long moment, then nodded once sharply. Then listen and remember, because this is your history, your blood, and one day you will have to decide what to do with it. He returned to his chair, picked up the photograph one more time, traced the outline of the woman's face with a fingertip rough as tree bark. Her name, he said, was Catherine Morrison, and the first time I saw her, she was already dead. Chapter 2, The Finding, October 1887. The snow came early that year, driven down from Canada by winds that could strip the flesh from your bones if you let them. Nathaniel had been checking his trap line, moving from station to station through drifts already 3 feet deep in the low places. He carried a Winchester Model 1873, 44-40 caliber, 15 rounds. A weapon does not keep a man warm, but it keeps him alive, which is sometimes more important. The trap line ran 5 miles through territory he knew better than he knew his own face. Every stone, every tree, every place where the deer came to water. He had walked it 1,000 times in 6 years of solitude, learning its rhythms, its seasons, its moods. The mountain was his only companion. It did not judge. It did not pity. It simply was. That morning at the 4th trap station near the Box Canyon, he found blood. Fresh blood, bright red against the new snow. Not animal blood. He knew animal blood. This was different, human, and there was too much of it. He followed the trail. It led east, toward the cliff face that dropped away into nothing. Whoever had bled here had been moving fast, stumbling, desperate. The tracks were erratic, sometimes showing bare feet, which meant whoever it was had lost their shoes or never had them. In October in Montana, bare feet meant death. The tracks ended at the cliff edge. Nathaniel stood at the precipice, looking down into the gorge 40 feet below. The bottom was hidden in shadow and scrub pine. Nothing moved. For a moment, he thought perhaps he had been tracking a ghost after all. Then he saw it, a patch of blue fabric unnatural against the gray and brown of the landscape. It moved slightly in the wind. Something about that movement, that small surrender to the elements, made his chest tighten in a way it had not tightened in 6 years. He found a game trail that switched back down the cliff face. The descent took 15 minutes. His hands ached with cold, even through his thick leather gloves. Old breaks from a grisly encounter in '81. The cold made them stiff, made them remember. He flexed them as he climbed, forcing blood through the damaged joints. At the bottom, he approached the blue fabric carefully. Animals could be playing dead. People could be desperate enough to do the same. But this was neither. Sister Catherine Morrison lay crumpled against a boulder, her body arranged at angles bodies are not meant to arrange. Her face was turned away, half buried in snow. One arm was flung out, reaching for something that was not there. The other was tucked beneath her, probably broken from the fall. Her habit was torn at the shoulder and down one side. The white collar that marked her as a bride of Christ was stained brown with old blood and fresh. Her feet were bare, the skin blue-white, no shoes. She had come here running, had chosen to jump rather than be caught by whatever had been chasing her. Nathaniel knelt beside her. He pulled off one glove, pressed 2 fingers to her throat. The skin was ice cold. For a moment, he felt nothing and thought he was too late. Then, faint as a whisper, he felt it. A pulse, weak, 40 beats per minute. Hypothermia, stage 2. Without intervention, she would be dead within the hour. He checked her pupils, reactive. No sign of severe head trauma, though there was blood matted in her hair. He ran his hands along her ribs, checking for the sharp edges of broken bones that might puncture a lung. Nothing. Her ribs were intact. Small miracle. But her wrists told a different story. Dark purple bruises circled both wrists, the kind made by hands. Someone had held her. Someone had held her hard enough to leave marks that would last weeks. These bruises were 2, maybe 3 days old. They had not come from the fall. They had come before. Nathaniel sat back on his heels, processing. A nun, alone, running, bruised. He looked at the cliff above. No one jumps unless what is behind them is worse than what is below. In his mind, unbidden, came the memory of Sarah's face, pale and slick with sweat, screaming as their son tore her apart from the inside. He remembered the midwife's face, grim and knowing. He remembered the blood, so much blood. He remembered digging 2 graves in frozen ground, his hands raw and bleeding, refusing help from the Blackfoot who had come to mourn with him. He remembered the promise he had made as he covered that second small grave. Never again. Never let anyone die alone. He stood, made a decision. Nathaniel Bishop was not a man who believed in signs, but if he had been, this would have qualified. The mountain had sent him here. The mountain did not waste his time. He needed to move her. But hypothermia was tricky. Move someone too fast, warm them too quick, and their heart could stop. He had seen it happen to a trapper who fell through ice. The man's friends pulled him out, put him by the fire. He died smiling at the warmth. Nathaniel took off his heavy coat, wrapped it around Catherine's torso. He lifted her carefully. She was light, too light. They had not been feeding her enough wherever she had come from. He could feel her bones through the fabric. He adjusted his grip, got her settled against his chest, began the climb back up the game trail. She made a sound, low and broken, not quite a word. Her head lolled against his shoulder. "You are safe," he said, though she likely could not hear him. "I have you." The climb took 20 minutes. Twice he had to stop and readjust his hold. The third time she opened her eyes. They were green, even glazed with pain and cold. They were green as new leaves. She looked at him, and in that look was pure animal terror. "No," she whispered, "please." Then her eyes rolled back, and she was gone again. The cabin was 2 miles north. Nathaniel covered the distance in 40 minutes, moving as fast as he dared with his burden. By the time he shouldered through the door, his arms were shaking and his breath came in harsh gasps. He laid her on the cot near the stove, built up the fire, then began the careful work of warming her. First, the wet clothes had to go. Hypothermia killed faster than modesty wounded. He stripped the torn habit, the thin shift beneath. Her body was covered in bruises, old and new. His jaw tightened, but his hands stayed gentle. He wrapped her in buffalo robes, heavy and warm. He positioned her near the stove, but not too close. Rapid warming caused shock. The body had to find its own way back. He heated broth, forced it between her teeth with a spoon, drop by drop. The body needed fuel to generate heat. Without calories, the core temperature would continue to drop, even under blankets. While the broth heated again, he examined her more carefully. The head wound was superficial, already clotting. The bruises on her wrists were the worst of it, along with the exposure. Her feet would blister, but she would keep them. Small mercy. On the back of her left hand, he found something else. A thin white scar, old and deliberate, the kind made by a blade drawn across the skin. Not a suicide attempt. The angle was wrong. This was defensive. Someone had come at her with a knife. She had blocked it. Nathaniel looked at the scar for a long time. Then he looked at the wooden cross he had carved years ago, hanging on the wall above the fireplace. He had made it the winter after Sarah died, needing something to do with his hands while the grief tried to kill him. He was not sure he believed in what it represented, but he believed in the man who had hung on one, a man who had been tortured for the crime of kindness. Perhaps that was belief enough. He sat back in his chair, watching the woman sleep, watching her chest rise and fall in shallow breaths. Outside, the wind picked up. The first real storm of winter was coming. They would be snowed in for days, which meant whoever was looking for her would not find her. Not yet. Which meant he had time to decide what to do. An hour passed, then another. The fire burned down. He fed it more wood. The light changed from afternoon gray to evening dark. Still she slept. Then, without warning, she woke. Her eyes snapped open, fully alert. She took in the cabin, the fire, the buffalo robes. She took in Nathaniel, sitting across the room, his rifle leaning against the wall behind him, but not in his hands. She looked down at herself, realized she was naked beneath the robes. Her breath quickened. Her pupils dilated. "Do not," she whispered. The word came out broken, raw. "Please do not." Nathaniel raised both hands slowly, palms out. He made no move toward her. He kept his voice low and even. "I am not him," he said. "Whoever hurt you, I am not him." She stared at him, breathing hard. Her eyes darted to the door. It was not barred. She could run if she chose. "You were dying in the snow," Nathaniel continued. "I brought you here. I warmed you, that is all." "Where are my clothes? It's drying. They were wet. Hypothermia kills faster than modesty wounds." She pulled the robes tighter around herself. "Who are you?" Nathaniel Bishop, this is my cabin. You are on my land, 2 miles south of the peak called Shepherd's Crown. Do you know where you are? Montana Territory. Yes. The question is, how did you get here? The nearest settlement is Redemption Falls, 10 miles north. The nearest convent is St. Catherine's, 12 miles northeast. You came from one of those places. And you came running. Her jaw tightened. She said nothing. Nathaniel leaned back in his chair, making himself smaller, less threatening. I am going to tell you 3 things. Then you can decide what happens next. First, I found you at the bottom of a cliff with bruises on your wrists that did not come from falling. Second, I have lived alone on this mountain for 6 years and have no interest in company I did not invite. Third, that door is not locked. You can leave whenever you choose, but if you leave now, you will be dead by morning. The storm is coming, and you have no shoes. She looked at the door again, calculating. He could see her mind working, weighing risks. Finally, her gaze fell on the wooden cross above the fireplace. You are a believer, she asked. I believe a good man died on a cross. Whether that makes him or just good, I do not know. But I know suffering when I see it. She studied him for a long moment. Then slowly she began to cry. Not the loud weeping of release, but the quiet tears of someone who has forgotten she still had tears to give. She covered her face with her hands, her shoulders shaking. Nathaniel did not move. He had learned in his years of solitude that there were times when the kindest thing was to witness someone's pain without trying to fix it. When she finally looked up, her face was red and wet, but her voice was steady. I did not fall, she said. I jumped. The words hung in the air between them, heavy as stones. I chose to die rather than go back. Nathaniel nodded slowly, accepting this. Then you chose wrong, because you are still alive, which means you get to choose again. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. What would you have me choose? To stay, to heal, to tell me who did this to you. And then we decide what comes next. She looked at him for a long time. Outside, the wind howled. The first pellets of snow began to hit the windows. The storm had arrived. My name is Catherine, she said finally. Sister Catherine Morrison. Sister no more, I would wager. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. No, sister no more. Chapter 3, The Building of Trust. For 3 days, Catherine Morrison spoke only when spoken to. She moved through the cabin like a shadow, always positioning herself so her back was to a wall. She flinched at sudden sounds. When Nathaniel rose from his chair, she would tense, ready to flee or fight. He learned to move slowly, to announce his intentions before acting. He gave her the cot. He slept in his chair by the fire, his rifle across his lap. The first night he woke to find her watching him, eyes wide in the darkness. He had simply closed his eyes again, giving her time to trust that sleep made him vulnerable too. On the morning of the second day, Nathaniel went outside to split wood. The storm had passed, leaving 2 feet of fresh snow. The world was transformed into something clean and brutal. He worked in the cold, his breath steaming, the axe rising and falling in steady rhythm. Double bit axe, 4-pound head. Each log split clean down the middle, 16 inches long, perfect for the stove. He had split perhaps 20 logs when he felt her watching from the doorway. He did not stop working, did not acknowledge her presence. After a time, she spoke. Why do you warm your hands before picking up the axe? He paused mid-swing, surprised by the question. He looked at his hands, the scarred knuckles, the fingers that did not quite straighten. Broke 3 fingers, old injury. If I work them cold, they lock up. Can't grip the axe properly. 1 slip, and I lose a foot. He flexed them slowly. So I warmed them first. He demonstrated, flexing his fingers slowly. She could see how the middle 2 fingers of his right hand remained slightly crooked, how they did not bend all the way. My father had that, she said quietly. He fought at Gettysburg, took a bullet through the hand. It never healed right. Every winter he would sit by the fire, working his fingers, trying to keep them loose. North or south? North, Illinois Volunteers. Nathaniel nodded. Good side to fight on. He thought so. He died thinking he had made the world better. I hope he was right. It was the most she had said since arriving. Nathaniel returned to his work, giving her space to retreat if she wished. But she stayed, wrapped in a blanket, watching him work. After a while, she spoke again. You live here alone? 6 years now. That is a long time to be alone. That's it. Time moves differently when you are not counting it. What happened 6 years ago? He split a particularly stubborn piece of knotted pine. The wood resisted twice before finally yielding with a sharp crack. My wife died, Sarah. She was carrying our first child. The labor went wrong. The midwife did what she could, but Sarah was small and the baby was large. They both died. I buried them on the ridge where the morning sun hits first. After that, I stopped going to town, stopped talking to people. The mountain does not require conversation. I am sorry. Who are you, or are you simply saying what is expected? She considered this. Both, I think. I have seen enough death to know the shape of grief, and I am saying it because I do not know what else to say to a man who lost everything. I did not lose everything. I still have this land, this cabin, my life. Sarah and our son, they lost everything. I just had to learn to keep living or they were gone. Catherine nodded slowly. That is honest. I appreciate honesty. Then let me be honest about something else, Nathaniel said, setting down the axe. You have been here 3 days. You eat the food I give you. You wear the clothes I provide. But you do not speak unless I speak first. You watch me like you expect me to turn into a wolf. I'm not going to ask what happened to you. Not yet. But I am going to tell you this. Whatever it was, it does not live here. In this cabin, you are safe. You do not have to earn safety. You do not have to pay for it. It simply is. Do you understand? She looked at him for a long moment. Then quietly she said, no one has ever said that to me before. Then the people in your life were fools. A small, sad smile touched her lips. Perhaps, or perhaps, they were simply afraid. Fear is no excuse for cruelty. It's not it. Fear makes people do terrible things. You know this. You have lived through a war against a grizzly. You know what fear can make you do. I do, but I also know what courage can make you do. And choosing to live when death seems easier, that is the hardest courage of all. She pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders. I should go back inside. I am cold. Then go, but Catherine, before you do, I want you to know something. That door is never locked. If you want to leave, you leave. If you want to stay, you stay. It is your choice. Always your choice. She looked at him, and something in her eyes shifted. Not trust, not yet, but the possibility of it. Thank you, Nathaniel Bishop. She turned and went inside. He watched her go, then returned to his work. But something had changed. The air felt different, less heavy. That evening, she ate supper at the table with him instead of huddled on the cot. She had combed her hair, tied it back with a strip of leather. Without the severe lines of the habit, there was a prettiness to her that would have made men stupid back when the world still had claim on her. These clothes, she said, touching the sleeve of the simple wool dress she wore, they fit me well. Were they your wife's? Yes. Does it bother you that I wear them? No, better they be worn than left to moths. Sarah would have agreed. They ate in silence for a time. Venison stew, thick with potatoes and wild onions. Bread he had baked 3 days prior, still good enough. Outside, the temperature was dropping. The windows had begun to frost at the corners. Finally, Catherine set down her spoon. She folded her hands on the table in front of her, as though steeling herself. You have been kind to me, she said. You have asked nothing in return. That is rare. So I am going to tell you what you have not asked. I am going to tell you why I jumped from that cliff. Nathaniel stopped eating. Only if you are ready. I am not ready, but I think it must be said anyway. She took a breath, held it, let it out slowly. His name is Damian Blackwood. His father, Silas Blackwood, owns half of Montana Territory. Silver mines mostly, but also cattle and timber. They are very wealthy, very powerful. 3 years ago, Damian came to St. Catherine's Convent, where I lived. He said he wanted to make a charitable donation. Father Cornelius, the priest who runs the convent, he was very pleased. $50,000, Damian's father offered. Enough to build a new chapel. Her voice was steady, but her knuckles were white where she gripped her hands together. Damian came back, many times. Always when Father Cornelius had business elsewhere. Always when the other sisters were at prayer and I was alone working in the infirmary. I taught orphans to read, you see, and I cared for the sick. So I was often alone. She paused. Nathaniel waited. The first time I thought it was a misunderstanding. He cornered me in the wine cellar, put his hands on me. I pushed him away and ran. I thought that would be the end of it. The second time, I knew it was not an accident. I scratched his face, drew blood. I went to Father Cornelius. I told him what had happened. He said I must be mistaken. A man of Damian Blackwood's station would never do such a thing. He said I must pray harder, resist temptation. Her voice had gone flat now, mechanical, as though she were reading from a ledger. The third time I fought, I broke his nose with a heavy skillet from the kitchen. Father Cornelius was very angry. He said I had attacked a benefactor. He said if I spoke of it again, I would be sent to an asylum for troubled women. He said nuns who caused problems had a way of disappearing. She looked up at Nathaniel. Her green eyes were hard as stone. It happened 11 times. 11 times over 3 years. Each time I reported it. Each time I was told I was lying, or mad, or wicked. The other sisters knew. Some of them had suffered the same. But we were told to be silent. We were told that our vows meant we had no voice in worldly matters. We were told we belonged to one, and God required our obedience. But you kept a record. Yes, Sister Agnes, she is the oldest of us, nearly 70. She told me to write everything down. Dates, times what happened. She said one day someone might listen. She hid my journal in her cell behind a loose stone. Father Cornelius never found it. What happened last week? Catherine's jaw tightened. Damien came again, but this time, he said he was finished playing game. He showed me papers. A marriage certificate, dated 3 years ago before I took my vows. He said we were engaged. He said he had witnesses who would testify that I broke my promise to him, that I fled to the convent to escape our engagement. He said the law would support him. He said I could come willingly as his wife, or he would take me by force and call it his legal right. So you ran. So I jumped. I thought death was better than what he planned, but you found me, so now I have to choose again. Nathaniel pushed his bowl away. His appetite had vanished. He thought about the bruises on her wrists. 11 times. 11 times she had been hunted in a place that should have been sanctuary. How many others? He asked. At least 5 that I know of. Sister Agnes collected their testimonies too. All of them were silenced. And the $50,000? Used to build the new chapel. We pray in a church built with blood money. Nathaniel stood, walked to the window. Outside, the stars were coming out, hard and bright in the clear cold. The temperature would drop below 0 tonight. Any living thing caught outside would be dead by morning. What do you want to happen now? He asked, still looking out at the night. What I want does not matter. It matters to me. What do you want, Catherine Morrison? The question seemed to stun her. She sat very still as though no one had ever asked her such a thing before. I want, she said slowly, to feel safe. I want to sleep without nightmares. I want to stop looking over my shoulder. I want to be treated as a person, not as property. I want someone to believe me when I say what happened. Nathaniel turned to face her. Then you will stay here through the winter. You will heal. You will learn to protect yourself. And when spring comes, we will go to Helena. We will find a federal marshal. We will bring Sister Agnes's journals. We will make them hear you. They will not believe me. The Blackwoods own the territorial government. Perhaps, but the United States government is larger than Montana Territory. There are federal laws about coercion, about assault, about fraud. We find the right man, we make him listen. And if they do not listen, then we find someone who will. I am a stubborn man, Catherine, and I have nowhere else to be. Hope flickered in her face, fragile as candlelight. Why would you do this? He looked at her across the dim cabin, this broken woman who had chosen death over submission, and he thought about Sarah dying in his arms while he could do nothing. He thought about 6 years of being a ghost in his own life. Because before you came here, I was already dead, he said. I walked through days like a man walking through feet. I breathed, I ate, I slept. But I was not alive. You changed that. You made me remember what it means to matter. That is worth fighting for. Tears filled her eyes, but she did not let them fall. I am not worth dying for. That is not your decision to make. They looked at each other across the space between them. Outside, an owl called, hunting in the frozen night. Its mate answered from another tree, always finding each other in the vast darkness. Tomorrow, Nathaniel said, I begin teaching you to shoot and to fight. If they come for you, you will know how to defend yourself. I cannot kill anyone. I am not asking you to kill. I am asking you to survive. There is a difference, Officers. Catherine nodded slowly. Then, surprising both of them, she rose from her chair and crossed the cabin. She stopped in front of him, close enough that he could see the flecks of gold in her green eyes. She reached out and touched his hand, just briefly, just her fingertips against his scarred knuckles. "Thank you," she whispered, "for seeing me as human." He looked down at where her fingers had touched, felt the ghost of that contact like a brand. "You should never have to thank someone for that, Catherine Morrison." "But I do," she said. "In this world, I do." She returned to the table, began clearing the dishes. He watched her move, this woman who had survived what should have killed her, and he felt something stir in his chest that he had thought long dead. Not love, not yet, but the possibility of it. And sometimes, possibility is enough. Chapter 4, The Threats Begin. On the fifth day, Nathaniel made the decision to ride into Redemption Falls for supplies. The storm had passed, leaving the world crystalline and still. He needed flour, coffee, ammunition, basic necessities that would see them through until spring. Catherine did not want him to go. He could see it in the way she gripped the edge of the table when he announced his plans. "They will be looking for me," she said. "If you are seen, they will ask questions. Let them ask. I have lived on this mountain for 6 years without explaining myself to anyone. I do not intend to start now. But if they know I am here, if they find out you are sheltering me, they will come for you too. Then they will learn that this mountain is not kind to uninvited guests." He checked his rifle, loaded it, checked it again. Catherine watched him with worried eyes. "How long will you be gone?" 6 hours, maybe 8. The town is 10 miles north. With the new snow, the going will be slow. "And if you do not come back?" He looked at her then, saw the real fear beneath the question. She had learned not to trust that people would return. "I will come back, Catherine. I give you my word." Words are cheap. Mine are not. He showed her how to bar the door from the inside, how to load the shotgun he left propped by the window. He showed her where he kept the spare ammunition, the medical supplies, the dried meat that would last weeks if rationed. He was teaching her to survive without him, and they both knew it. "If anyone comes," he said, "anyone at all, you do not open the door. You do not speak. You let them think the cabin is empty. If they try to force entry, you fire one shot through the door. That will make most men reconsider. And if it does not, then you fire until the gun is empty, and then you run. Follow the creek north to where it splits. Take the eastern fork. 2 miles up, you will find a camp. Blackfoot people. Tell them you are Nathaniel Bishop's guest. They will protect you." She nodded, memorizing the instructions. He mounted his horse, a sturdy roan mare that had carried him through 6 Montana winters. The animal's breath steamed in the cold air. Nathaniel looked back at the cabin, at Catherine standing in the doorway, small and determined. "Bar the door," he called. She nodded and went inside. He heard the heavy beams slide into place. Only then did he turn the horse toward town. The ride took 4 hours through snow that came up to the mare's chest in places. The world was silent except for the crunch of hooves, the labored breathing of the horse, the occasional crack of ice-laden branches breaking under their burden. Nathaniel's thoughts turned over and over like stones in a tumbler, wearing smooth with repetition. A woman alone, bruised, running, a powerful man's son with a taste for violence, a priest who chose money over mercy. It was not a complicated story. It was as old as sin itself. What made it remarkable was that Catherine had survived. Most did not. He thought about that night 6 years ago, the midwife's grim face, the blood, the silence after Sarah's last scream. He had held his son for exactly 3 minutes before the cold took him. 3 minutes of fatherhood. That was all he would ever have. But Catherine was different. Catherine could be saved. Not from what had already happened, but from what might happen next. And that, Nathaniel thought, was worth whatever price he would have to pay. Redemption Falls appeared gradually through the trees, a collection of rough wooden buildings huddled against the cold. Smoke rose from a dozen chimneys. The sound of a blacksmith's hammer rang out, steady and sure. Life continued here, oblivious to the drama unfolding in the mountains above. Nathaniel tied his horse outside the general store. He stamped the snow from his boots, pushed through the door into warmth and the smell of coffee and dry goods. The storekeeper, a man named Holloway, looked up from his ledger. His face registered surprise. "Nathaniel Bishop. Been a while, 6 months at least." "Has it? I do not keep close count." What brings you down from your mountain? Need supplies. Flour, coffee, salt, ammunition for a 44-40 and a 12 gauge. Holloway began gathering items, his movements practiced and efficient. Big order. Planning for a long winter? Planning for winter. Whether it is long or short, I will be ready. Other customers were in the store, pretending not to listen while listening intently. Small towns had one currency more valuable than gold: information. Nathaniel's appearance was worth noting, worth discussing later over whiskey and speculation. As Holloway tallied the order, the door opened. A man entered, bringing with him a gust of cold air and an air of authority. Marshall Webb. Nathaniel had met him once or twice years ago. He was the kind of lawman who kept the peace by knowing when to look away. Webb nodded to Nathaniel. Bishop, surprised to see you in town. Needed supplies. Winter getting to you up there? Winter is winter. Webb moved closer, casual but deliberate. Funny thing, Father Cornelius over at the convent, he has been asking around. Says one of his nuns went missing about a week ago. Young woman, dark hair, mid-20s. You have not seen anyone like that on your travels, have you? Nathaniel met the marshal's eyes without blinking. I do not see many people on my travels. That is why I live where I live. Of course, of course. Still, Father Cornelius is concerned. Says the woman might be disturbed. Mentally unwell. Could be a danger to herself. Is that what he says? It is. So if you do happen to see her, you would do well to report it, for her own safety. Nathaniel paid for his supplies, took his time loading them into his saddlebags. When he was finished, he turned back to Webb. Marshal, I have a question for you. Go ahead. If a woman runs from a place, runs so hard she is willing to die rather than go back, what does that tell you about the place she ran from? Webb's expression hardened. That is a hypothetical question, Bishop. I deal in facts. Do you? That is good to know. Nathaniel mounted his horse and turned toward the edge of town. He had made it perhaps 100 yards when he saw the man standing in the middle of the street. Young, well-dressed, with a face that had been handsome before someone broke his nose. The break was recent, poorly set. The bruising had faded to yellow-green. Damian Blackwood. Nathaniel pulled his horse to a stop. They regarded each other across 30 feet of packed snow. You are Nathaniel Bishop, Damian said. It was not a question. I am. They say you live alone up on the mountain, that you do not welcome visitors. They say true. So if I were to ride up there, uninvited, what would happen? You would find out why I do not welcome visitors. Damian smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. I am looking for someone, a woman. She belongs to me. If she found her way to your cabin, I would want her returned. I do not have anyone's property at my cabin. Of course not. But just so we understand each other, if I find out you are lying, if I find out you are hiding what is mine, there will be consequences. My father owns this territory. The marshal, the judge, the mayor, all of them. Cross me, and you cross all of them. Nathaniel nudged his horse forward until he was alongside Damian. He leaned down close enough that only the younger man could hear. Let me tell you something, boy. Your father may own the town, but that mountain up there, that mountain does not care who your father is. It does not care about your money or your power, and neither do I. So if you come to my land uninvited, you had better bring enough men to take me, because I will not go easy. He straightened, touched the brim of his hat in mock courtesy, and rode past. He did not look back, but he could feel Damian's eyes on him all the way to the edge of town. The ride home took 5 hours. Nathaniel pushed the mare as hard as he dared, urgency driving him. He had made an enemy today, probably several, but he had also drawn a line in the snow. Let them try to cross it. By the time he reached the cabin, the sun was setting behind the peaks. Catherine must have been watching for him because the door opened before he could dismount. You came back, she said. There was relief in her voice. I gave you my word. He unloaded the supplies while she told him about her quiet day. She had not opened the door. She had kept the fire going. She had not panicked, even though 8 hours of solitude in a strange place would have broken many people. After they had stored everything and seen to the horse, Nathaniel told her about his encounter with Webb and Damian. She listened without interrupting, her face growing pale. They know, she said when he finished. They will come for me now. Perhaps, but they will not come tonight or tomorrow. They will wait for the weather to improve, and they will bring men. which gives us time to prepare. Prepare for what? For war? If necessary. But first, I need to teach you to shoot. They went outside into the blue twilight. Nathaniel set up targets, tin cans balanced on fence posts. He handed her the Winchester, showed her how to hold it, how to sight down the barrel. The rifle kicks, he said, but not as much as you fear. Breathe in, breathe out halfway, hold, then squeeze, do not pull. The shot will surprise you if you do it right. She took the rifle, her hands shaking slightly. He stood behind her, not touching but close enough to steady her if she needed it. I am afraid, she whispered. Did I good? Fear keeps you alive. It is panic that kills. She fired. The shot went wide, missing the can by 3 feet, but she worked the lever, chambered another round, fired again. This time she hit the post. The third shot knocked the can flying. She lowered the rifle, breathing hard. I did it. You did. Now do it 19 more times until it becomes instinct. They stayed out there until full dark. The muzzle flashed bright against the night. The sound of gunfire rolling across the empty landscape like thunder. Each shot was a promise. Each hit was a declaration. When they finally went back inside, Catherine's shoulder was bruised from the recoil, and her hands were shaking from cold and adrenaline. But there was something new in her eyes. Not quite confidence, but the beginning of it. That night after supper, Nathaniel found a note pinned to his door with a hunting knife. He had not heard anyone approach. That troubled him more than the message itself. The note was brief, written in a crude hand. Return the whore nun by Sunday or burn. He showed it to Catherine. She read it without expression. What day is it? She asked. Thursday? 3 days then. 3 days. She looked up at him, and in her face he saw not fear, but something harder. Resolve. Then we have 3 days to get ready. That night, neither of them slept well. Nathaniel dozed in his chair, the rifle across his lap, waking at every small sound. Catherine lay on the cot, staring at the ceiling, her hand beneath the pillow where she had hidden a kitchen knife. Outside, the wolves howled. The wind rose, and somewhere in the darkness, men were planning violence, convinced that might made right, that power gave them permission. They would learn differently, or they would die learning. Either way, the lesson would be taught. Dawn broke cold and hard over the Montana peaks. Inside the cabin, Nathaniel woke to find Catherine already up, stoking the fire. She had tied her hair back with a strip of leather, rolled up her sleeves. There was something different about her this morning, a straightness to her spine that had not been there before. How long until they come? She asked without preamble. 2 days, maybe 3, depends on the weather and how many men Blackwood can gather. Then we should not waste time. He taught her everything that morning. How to load the shotgun in darkness, counting shells by touch. How to aim low because fear makes people shoot high. How to work the pump action without looking. Muscle memory taking over when the mind went white with terror. She learned quickly, her movements becoming smoother with each repetition. After an hour, he switched weapons. The revolver was harder, required steadier hands, better aim, but it could be hidden, could be fired from concealment. 5 rounds, he said, showing her the cylinder. Count them in your head. When you are empty, you are dead if you do not reload fast. She practiced until her hands cramped, until she could draw and fire in a single motion. Not fast, not yet, but competent. Competent might be enough. By midday, they moved to hand. This was harder. It required touch, closeness. Catherine tensed when he demonstrated how to break a grip, where to strike to drop a man. But she pushed through the fear, learning the mechanics of violence with grim determination. You are smaller, Nathaniel said. That means you fight dirty. Eyes, throat, groin. Do not try to match strength. Use speed. Use surprise. And if you get a man down, you run. Do not stay to finish it. What if running is not an option? He looked at her steadily. Then you do what you must to survive, and you do not apologize for it after. They broke for a cold lunch, eating jerked venison and hard bread without speaking. The cabin felt smaller now, charged with the anticipation of violence. Nathaniel found himself watching Catherine when he thought she was not looking, noting the way she had changed in less than a week. The fearful woman who had woken in his cabin was still there, but something else was emerging. Something harder. In the afternoon, a horse approached up the trail. Nathaniel grabbed his rifle, positioned himself by the window. Catherine took the shotgun without being told, moved to cover the door. They had rehearsed this. They were ready. But the rider who emerged from the tree line was not a threat, at least not an immediate one. Mary Whitehorse sat astride a painted pony, her long black hair braided, a rifle across her saddle. She was Blackfoot, about 30 years old, with a face that had seen enough of life to be cautious but not cruel. Nathaniel had known her since the winter Sarah died, when the Blackfoot had come to mourn with him, even though he had not asked them to. Mary had sat outside his cabin for 3 days, saying nothing, just being present. After that, she visited twice a year, bringing news, trading herbs and beadwork for salt and ammunition. Nathaniel opened the door. Mary dismounted, tied her horse. "Nate Bishop," she said, "you have caused trouble." "I have been told." "The town is talking. They say you harbor a runaway nun. They say Father Cornelius wants her back. They say Damian Blackwood claims she is his promised wife." Mary's dark eyes moved to Catherine, who stood holding the shotgun like she knew how to use it. "This must be her." "This is Catherine Morrison. Catherine, this is Mary Whitehorse. She is a friend." Mary studied Catherine for a long moment. Then she nodded, apparently satisfied by what she saw. "You have the look of a fighter," Mary said. "That is good. You will need to be." "What is happening in town?" Nathaniel asked. Mary turned back to him. "Blackwood is gathering men, 20, maybe more. Miners, ranch hands, men who owe him money or fear him. They will come tomorrow or the day after. Marshal Webb will lead them. Father Cornelius will bless them. They call it a rescue. They call you a kidnapper." "And what do you call it?" "I call it what it is. Powerful men hunting a woman who said no. My people know this story. We have lived it." She paused. "There is more. Blackwood has hired Crow Scouts to watch the mountain trails. If you try to run, they will know." Catherine's face went pale. "Then we are trapped." "Trapped is a matter of perspective," Mary said. "You are on Nate Bishop's mountain. That is different from being cornered in town." She looked at Nathaniel. "You remember what we taught you, the old ways?" "I remember." "Good, then you have a chance." Mary moved to her horse, began untying something from her saddle. She returned with a leather pouch, opened it to reveal dried herbs, roots, in a small clay jar. "This is from Standing Bear. He says the white man's medicine failed your Sarah. He does not want it to fail this one." She handed the pouch to Catherine. "Yarrow root for bleeding, sage for infection. The salve is made with bear grease and pine resin. It will close wounds fast. If you are shot, pack the hole with yarrow first, then salve, then bandage tight. It may save your life." Catherine took the pouch, overwhelmed. "I do not know what to say." "Say nothing, just live. That is thanks enough." Mary mounted her horse, gathered the reins. Before she left, she looked down at Nathaniel. "You're Sarah. She saw you truly, saw the man you are, not the ghost you became. This woman," she gestured at Catherine, "she sees you too. Fight for her, or regret it the way you regret Sarah." Then she was gone, disappearing into the pines like smoke. Nathaniel stood in the doorway, staring after her. Catherine came to stand beside him. "What did she mean?" Catherine asked quietly. "About Sarah seeing you?" "The Blackfoot have a word, Isinapi. It means one who sees truly, someone who looks past the surface, past the lies people tell themselves. Sarah was that. She saw me when I was young and stupid and thought I was invincible. She saw the man I could be instead of the fool I was, and she loved me anyway. And now she is gone. And now she is gone." Catherine was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I see you too, Nathaniel Bishop. I see a man who could have left me to die, who could have turned me away, who could have given me to my enemies to save himself. But you did none of those things. You chose the harder path. That is rare." He looked down at her, this woman who had survived what should have killed her, and felt something shift in his chest. Not love, not yet, but something that could become love if they lived long enough. "We should prepare the cabin," he said, his voice rough. "They will come soon." Chapter 6, The Night Visitor. They spent the rest of the day fortifying their position. Nathaniel barred the windows with thick pine planks, leaving only narrow firing slits. He moved furniture to create barriers, positioned water barrels for firefighting, laid out ammunition in easy reach. Catherine worked beside him, learning the architecture of defense. As the sun set, painting the snow gold and red, an old man appeared at the edge of the clearing. He walked slowly, leaning on a cane, his breath steaming in the cold air. Nathaniel recognized him immediately. Jacob Freeman, 72 years old, blacksmith, widower. A good man in a town full of compromised ones. Nathaniel stepped onto the porch, rifle in hand, but pointed down. Jacob, long way to walk for a man your age. Got something to say. Could not wait. Say it then. Jacob climbed the porch steps, moving like each one cost him. When he reached the top, he looked past Nathaniel to where Catherine stood in the doorway. You are the girl they are hunting, Jacob said. It was not a question. I am. And you ran from them? I did. Jacob nodded slowly. Good. Running from evil is not cowardice. It is wisdom. He turned to Nathaniel. They are coming tomorrow night. 20 men. Webb will deputize them, make it legal. They will burn you out if you do not hand her over. Let them try. Nate, listen to me. I am old. I do not have much time left in this world. But I have something I need to say, and I need to say it before it is too late. He paused, gathered himself. 20 years ago, I had a daughter, Emma. She was 17, pretty, smart as a whip. A rich man's son took a liking to her. When she refused him, he forced himself on her. She told me. I told the marshal. The marshal said she must be mistaken, said a man of quality would not do such a thing, said maybe Emma had encouraged him, led him on. Jacob's voice cracked. He cleared his throat, continued. Emma killed herself 3 weeks later, walked into the river with stones in her pockets. I buried her next to her mother, and I have lived 20 years knowing I failed her, knowing I stayed quiet when I should have roared, knowing I chose peace over justice because I was afraid. He looked at Nathaniel, then at Catherine. I will not make that mistake twice. Tomorrow night when they come, I will be here. I will stand with you. And if I die, well, I am 72 years old. I have had my time, but that girl, he pointed at Catherine, she deserves hers. Nathaniel felt his throat tighten. Jacob, you do not have to do this. Yes, I do. I have to for Emma. I have to for every girl who was not believed, not protected, not avenged. And I have to for myself, so I can die knowing I finally did the right thing. He reached into his coat, pulled out an envelope. This is a letter. If I do not make it, you give it to anyone who will listen. It tells everything. Names, dates, what happened to Emma, what I saw happen to others. It is my testimony, my last act. Nathaniel took the letter, feeling its weight. Stay for supper. It is the least I can offer. They ate together, the three of them, as the darkness closed in. Jacob told stories of Emma, how she had loved horses, how she had wanted to be a teacher. Catherine listened with tears in her eyes, understanding that this man's loss and her own suffering were threads in the same dark tapestry. When Jacob finally left, walking slowly back down the mountain with a lantern to light his way, Nathaniel and Catherine stood on the porch watching until the light disappeared into the trees. He is going to die tomorrow, Catherine said quietly. Maybe, or maybe he finally gets to live. She looked at him, confused. A man who spends 20 years carrying guilt, Nathaniel explained. He is already dead. Jacob just buried the body today. That night, sleep would not come. Nathaniel sat by the fire, cleaning his rifle for the third time. Catherine lay on the cot, staring at the ceiling. Finally, she spoke into the darkness. Nathaniel? Yes. If we die tomorrow, I want you to know something. These past days here with you, I have felt more human than I have in 3 years. You gave me that. Whatever happens, thank you. He set down the rifle, stood, walked to where she lay. He knelt beside the cot, close enough to see her face in the firelight. We are not going to die tomorrow, he said. But if we do, I want you to know this. Before you came, I was a ghost. I walked through my life like a man underwater, everything muted and distant. You changed that. You made me feel again. And feeling, even fear, even anger, even grief, that is better than the nothing I had before. She reached out, touched his face with weird fingertips. Just a brief contact, but it sent electricity through him. I'm afraid to be happy, she whispered. Every time I am, it gets taken away. Me too, but maybe we can be afraid together. For a long moment, they stayed like that, kneeling in the near dark, the fire burning low. Then Catherine did something that surprised them both. She sat up, took his face in both hands, and kissed him. It was not the kiss of passion. It was the kiss of two people who had forgotten they were allowed to feel anything good. It was gentle and desperate and terrified and brave all at once. When she pulled back, her eyes were shining with unshed tears. "I wanted to feel alive," she said, "just once before the end." Nathaniel stood, held out his hand. She took it. He pulled her to her feet into his arms. They stood there, holding each other, not speaking, just breathing in the same rhythm. His chin rested on the top of her head, her arms wrapped around his waist. They fit together like pieces of a puzzle neither had known was incomplete. She whispered against his chest, "They would hang us for this." For what? For choosing each other? For defying them? For proving them wrong? She looked up at him. "You are not supposed to want someone like me. I am not supposed to want to live. But here we are." He tightened his hold. "Here we are, and I would not choose anywhere else." He kissed her again, slower this time, deeper. And for a few precious hours, the threat waiting in the valley below ceased to exist. There was only this cabin, this fire, this moment stolen from the jaws of whatever tomorrow would bring. When they finally lay down together, wrapped in buffalo robes on the cabin floor, it was not about desire. It was about two damaged people finding comfort in the only way they knew how. It was about choosing life in the face of death. It was about being human when the world kept telling them they were something less. And when Catherine finally fell asleep in his arms, her breathing deep and steady, Nathaniel lay awake and made a promise to a God he was not sure he believed in. Let her live. Take me if you must, but let her live. The fire burned down to embers. Outside, the temperature dropped below zero. And somewhere in the darkness, men were gathering, convinced they were righteous, convinced they were doing God's work. They would learn differently, but the lesson would be written in blood. Chapter 7. The siege. They came at sunset as the sky turned the color of bruises. 23 men carrying torches, rifles, rope. Marshal Webb rode at their head, a deputized mob masquerading as law. Father Cornelius walked beside him, holding a large wooden cross like a weapon. Nathaniel watched them from the firing slit in the north wall. He had known they would come, had prepared for it. But seeing the torches winding up the mountain trail still made his jaw tighten. Catherine stood at the south wall, the shotgun in her hands, her face set. She had tied her hair back, rolled up her sleeves. She looked like a woman ready for war. 23, Nathaniel said quietly. More than I expected. Can we hold them? We can try. The mob stopped 50 yards from the cabin, just out of easy rifle range. They spread out in a semicircle, torches held high. Marshal Webb rode forward another 20 feet alone. "Nathaniel Bishop," he called. "I am here as a duly appointed officer of Montana Territory. You are harboring a fugitive. Send out Sister Catherine Morrison, and this ends peacefully." Nathaniel opened a firing slit, spoke through it. "She is no fugitive. She is a woman who ran from men who hurt her. That is not a crime." "She is church property," Father Cornelius shouted. "She took sacred vows. She belongs to God." "She belongs to herself," Nathaniel shouted back. "No person can own another. That is federal law." "Federal law does not apply to matters of the church," Cornelius replied. "We have the right to reclaim our own." From the mob, a new voice, younger, drunk on power or whiskey or both. Damian Blackwood pushed his horse forward. "That is my wife you are hiding, Bishop. I have papers, witnesses. She was promised to me before she took those vows. Send her out or we will take her." "I am not your wife," Catherine's voice rang out from inside the cabin, clear and strong. "I never promised you anything. Those papers are forgeries. Those witnesses are liars bought with your father's money." The mob stirred, voices rising. Some men looked uncertain now. The lie was unraveling in real time. "She is mad," Damian shouted, disturbed. "Cannot you hear it in her voice? We are trying to help her." "By hunting her through the wilderness? By threatening to burn down a man's home? That is help?" Catherine's laugh was bitter. "You raped me, Damian Blackwood, 11 times over 3 years." Father Cornelius knew. He locked the door from the outside so no one would hear me scream. "Is that the help you mean?" Silence. The kind that comes when truth is spoken in a place used to lies. Several men in the mob looked at each other, doubt creeping in. Then Father Cornelius raised his cross high. "Lies. The ravings of a fallen woman. She seduced good men and now blames them for her own sin. We must cleanse this place of her corruption." He gestured to the mob. "Burn them out. God wills it." And the first torch arced through the air, trailing fire. It landed on the roof, rolled off into the snow. The second hit the side of the cabin, stuck for a moment, then fell. But the third found the woodpile 30 feet from the cabin. The dry logs caught immediately, flames leaping high. Nathaniel fired. The shot was a warning, kicking up snow 5 feet in front of the front rank of men. They scattered, taking cover behind trees, rocks, their own horses. Return fire began immediately, bullets thudding into the cabin walls, splintering wood. Catherine fired the shotgun through her slit, aiming low as Nathaniel had taught her. Buckshot sprayed across the snow. A man screamed, fell, clutching his leg. The mob's enthusiasm faltered. Then, from the darkness behind the mob, came a single voice, old but strong. "That is far enough." Jacob Freeman stepped into the firelight, carrying his old hunting rifle. He moved slowly but with purpose, positioning himself between the cabin and the mob. "Jacob," Marshall Webb's voice was incredulous. "What are you doing?" "What I should have done 20 years ago, standing up. You are protecting a kidnapper. I am protecting an innocent woman from guilty men. There is a difference." Damian Blackwood sneered. "Old fool, go home before you get hurt." Jacob turned to face him. The firelight caught his face, made him look ancient and terrible. "You are right about one thing, boy. I am old. I do not have much time left, but I have enough time to make sure you do not hurt another girl the way you hurt Emma, the way you hurt Sister Catherine, the way you will hurt the next one if someone does not stop you. I do not know what you are talking about." "Yes, you do. Your kind always does. You think money makes you immune. You think power gives you permission. But tonight, right now, that stops." Jacob raised his rifle, aimed it directly at Damian. "Right away, all of you, or I start shooting. And at this range, even an old man cannot miss." For a long moment, no one moved. The only sound was the crackle of burning wood, the harsh breathing of frightened horses. Then Marshall Webb spoke, his voice careful. "Jacob, put down the gun. Nobody has to die here." "You are wrong. Somebody has been dying here for years. Girls like Emma, girls like Catherine. They die piece by piece while men like you look away." "I am done looking away." He fired. Not at Damian, not yet, but at the ground between the young man's horse and the mob. The animal reared, screaming. Other horses shied. Men scrambled backward. That was when they rushed him. 4 men broke from cover, running low. Jacob fired again, hit one in the shoulder, worked the bolt, fired again. But there were too many. They swarmed him, dragged him down. Fists rose and fell. Boots kicked. Nathaniel roared. He threw open the cabin door, fired 3 rapid shots. 2 men dropped, hit in the legs. The others scattered. But the damage was done. Jacob lay in the snow, his face a mask of blood. His arm was bent at an unnatural angle. He was not moving. Nathaniel ran to him, crouched low, grabbed the old man under the arms, began dragging him toward the cabin. Bullets whined past his head. One tugged at his sleeve. Another scored a line across his shoulder, hot and sharp. He ignored them, focused only on getting Jacob to safety. Catherine appeared beside him, laying down, covering fire with a shotgun, working the pump action like she had been born to it. Together, they got Jacob into the cabin, slammed the door, barred it. Jacob coughed, blood bubbling on his lips. His chest made wet, broken sounds. Nathaniel knelt beside him, knowing immediately it was bad. Multiple broken ribs, internal bleeding, maybe a punctured lung. "Jacob, hold on, we can fix this." The old man smiled, blood on his teeth. No fixing this," he coughed again. Did I do good?" "You did good, you did brave. You did everything Emma would have wanted." "Tell people, tell them. Why? Tell them it matters." "I will." Jacob's eyes found Catherine, who knelt on his other side, tears streaming down her face. "You live, girl. You live. And you make it mean something." "I will, I promise." Jacob took a shuddering breath, then another, weaker, then nothing. His eyes stayed open, staring at the ceiling, seeing something none of them could see. Nathaniel reached out, closed them gently. In his pocket, he felt the envelope. Jacob's testimony, his final gift. Catherine made a sound, half sob, half wail. No, not him. He was good. He was trying to help." Nathaniel pulled her away from the body, held her as she shook. "I know, but he made a choice. He chose to stand. After 20 years of regret, he finally chose right." He died because of me. No, he died because of them. Because men like Damian Blackwood think they can do whatever they want without consequence. Jacob made them face a consequence. That matters. Outside, the mob had regrouped. Their righteousness had curdled into rage. The violence they had justified as rescue had become simple vengeance. "Burn them," someone shouted. "Burn them all." Torches flew. This time, some stuck to the roof. Flames began to spread, finding gaps in the tar paper, starting to eat through. Smoke seeped down into the cabin. Nathaniel made a decision. They could not stay. The cabin would become a coffin if they did. "The root cellar," he said to Catherine. "In the back, it leads to a tunnel. Comes out 50 yards north, hidden in the rocks. We go now." "And leave Jacob?" "Jacob is past caring. We are not." He threw open the back door, fired twice to clear the immediate area, then grabbed Catherine's hand. They ran. The night erupted in gunfire. Bullets kicked up snow around their feet. One caught Nathaniel in the side, a hot punch that staggered him. But he kept running, pulling Catherine with him. They made it to the rocks, found the tunnel entrance, plunged into darkness. Behind them, the cabin roof collapsed inward, sending sparks and flames high into the night. The mob cheered, convinced they had won. They had not. They had just made it personal. Chapter 8. The Reckoning. The tunnel was narrow, damp, and pitch black. Nathaniel and Catherine crawled through it, feeling their way forward. Above them, muffled by earth and stone, they could hear the mob searching, looking for bodies in the burning cabin. The tunnel ended in a cleft between two boulders. Nathaniel pushed through first, checked the area, then pulled Catherine out. They emerged into a small clearing surrounded by dense pines. The burning cabin was visible below them, a beacon of destruction. Men moved around it like ants, silhouetted against the flames. Nathaniel pressed his hand to his side. It came away wet and dark. Catherine saw, gasped. "You are shot." "Grazed. I have had worse." "That is more than a graze." She tore a strip from her underskirt, pressed it hard against the wound. He grunted but did not pull away. The pressure was necessary. Blood loss killed as surely as bullets. "We cannot stay here," he said through clenched teeth. "They will find the tunnel eventually. We need to move." "Where?" "North, to the Blackfoot camp. Mary said they would protect you." "You mean us?" "Catherine, I cannot move fast. I will slow you down. You need to go without me." She looked at him with eyes that had gone hard as stone. "I ran before. I jumped off a cliff rather than face what was coming. I am done running. If you stay, I stay. If you did, I did. Those are the options." He wanted to argue, but the look on her face told him argument was useless. Instead, he nodded. They moved north through the darkness, Nathaniel leaning on Catherine more than he wanted to admit. The pain in his side was growing, spreading. The makeshift bandage was already soaked through. He knew the signs. The bullet had not grazed. It had gone in, and it was still in there, doing damage with every step. After an hour, they stopped to rest. Catherine changed the bandage, packed the wound with the yarrow root from Mary's medicine pouch. Nathaniel's face was pale, slick with sweat, despite the cold. "How much further?" Catherine asked. 2 miles, maybe 3. He coughed, tasted copper. "Not good." "Catherine, listen to me. In my coat pocket, there is a letter. From Jacob. If I do not make it, you take that letter. You get to Helena. You find a federal marshal named Ethan Cole. He is honest. Rare thing in Montana, but he is. You give him the letter and Sister Agnes's journal. You make him listen. We will give it to him together. Catherine, together or not at all." She helped him to his feet. They continued north, 2 figures in the vast darkness, leaving a trail of blood in the snow. The Blackfoot camp appeared like a mirage through the trees. 7 lodges arranged in a circle, smoke rising from the center fire. Dog barked at their approach. A sentry emerged, rifle ready, then relaxed when he recognized Nathaniel. "Nate Bishop, you bring trouble." "I bring a woman who needs protection, and I need medicine." The sentry nodded, called out in Blackfoot. Mary Whitehorse appeared from one of the lodges. She took in Nathaniel's condition, Catherine's desperate grip on him, and understood immediately. "Bring him," she said. They half carried Nathaniel into Mary's lodge. She had him lie down on buffalo robes, then began cutting away his shirt. The bullet wound was small and ugly, still bleeding. Mary probed it with quick, practiced fingers. "Bullet is still in there, deep, near the liver. Bad place. Can you get it out?" "Maybe, maybe not." If I try and fail, you die faster. If I do not try, you die slower. Your choice. Nathaniel looked at Catherine, who was gripping his hand hard enough to break bones. Try, he said. Mary nodded. She called for Standing Bear, the tribal elder. He came, bringing more medicine, a knife that had been heated in fire until it glowed. Mary gave Nathaniel a leather strap. Bite down, this will hurt. It hurt. Pain like he had never known, white and absolute. He felt the knife enter, felt her fingers following it, searching. He bit through the leather strap. Somewhere far away, Catherine was crying, or maybe that was him. He could not tell anymore. Then Mary's fingers found the bullet, worked it free. The pain peaked, went nova, then suddenly receded as she pulled her hand free. She packed the wound with salve, moss, bandages. More magic from Mary's pouch. You are lucky, she said. Bullet missed the liver, nicked a rib. You will live if infection does not take you. Nathaniel passed out. When he woke, it was daylight. Catherine sat beside him, holding his hand, her eyes red from crying. Standing Bear sat across from them, smoking a pipe. Welcome back, Nate Bishop, the old man said. You have slept 1 day and 1 night. Your woman did not leave your side. What happened? Did they follow? They came to the boundary of our land. We made them leave. They do not have courage to fight Blackfoot, only courage to burn cabins and kill old men. Nathaniel tried to sit up. Pain shot through his side, but it was bearable. A good sign. Jacob Freeman, he saved us. We know, Mary told us, his spirit is honored here. Standing Bear drew on his pipe, let the smoke out slowly. Nate Bishop, 6 years ago you lost your Sarah. We mourned with you because she was a Sinapi, one who sees truly. Now you have found another who sees. Standing Bear drew on his pipe, let the smoke out slowly. Nate Bishop, 6 years ago, you lost your Sarah. We mourned with you because she was Isinapi, one who sees truly. He paused, looked at Catherine. Sarah died because white man's medicine failed. We brought yarrow and bear grease. You refused us. You said it was too late. Perhaps it was. He tapped his pipe. This woman, Mary, gave her the same medicine. It saved her life, yes? Do not refuse us twice. Now you have found another who sees. This is good. But the men who hunt her, they will not stop. They have been humiliated. They will want blood. This is good. But the men who hunt her, they will not stop. They have been humiliated. They will want blood. Then I will give them blood. No, you will give them justice. That is a different thing. Standing Bear reached into his robe, pulled out a folded paper. Mary found this in your coat. The dead man's letter. Mary reads English. She read it to us. It tells a story we know well. Powerful men hurting the powerless. In my father's time, we would have ridden to that town and killed every man in it. But that time is gone. Now there are new ways. The white man's law, it can be used against them. The law belongs to Silas Blackwood. He owns the territory. But not the United States government. That is bigger, and it has rules even Blackwood must follow. Standing Bear leaned forward. Go to Helena. Find the honest marshal. Bring the letters, the journals, the truth. Make them see what we already see, that sometimes the forbidden thing is not the crime. It is the punishment. Nathaniel looked at Catherine. Can you ride? Can you? I will manage. They left that afternoon, riding horses provided by the Blackfoot. Nathaniel was weak, but determined. The wound in his side pulled with every movement, but Mary's medicine kept infection at bay. They would make it. They had to. The journey to Helena took 7 days through snow and cold. They slept in caves under deadfalls, anywhere that offered shelter. Catherine hunted when Nathaniel could not, bringing down rabbits with the rifle, her aim improving with practice. They talked, filling the long hours, learning each other's histories. On the 5th night, huddled under a rock overhang, while sleet hammered the world outside, Catherine finally asked the question that had been building since that night at the cabin. What happens to us after, if we survive? Nathaniel looked at her, this woman who had saved his life as surely as he had saved hers. What do you want to happen? I want what I am not supposed to want. I want to be with you. I want to build something that is ours, not theirs. I want to wake up every morning knowing I chose my own life. She paused. But I do not know if that is allowed. Allowed by whom? What about us? The church? Silas Blackwood? Nathaniel shook his head. Catherine, the only permission you need is your own. If you want a life with me, then we build one. If you do not, Then we part as friends who saved each other. But it is your choice, always your choice. She leaned against him, careful of his wound. Then I choose you. I choose us, whatever that means. They reached Helena on the 7th day. It was a real town, not like Redemption Falls. Buildings of brick and stone, streets of cobbled rock, the smell of coal smoke and civilization. They found the marshal's office near the courthouse, a squat building with a sign that read, U.S. Marshal, Montana Territory. Ethan Cole was younger than Nathaniel expected, maybe 40, with intelligent eyes and the hard face of a man who had seen too much corruption to trust easily. He listened to their story without interrupting, read Jacob's letter, examined the forged marriage certificate Catherine had stolen from Damien's coat. When they finished, he sat back in his chair, steepled his fingers. This is a serious accusation, he said finally. It is the truth, Catherine replied. Truth and proof are not always the same thing in a court of law. Silas Blackwood has money, influence, lawyers. You have a dead man's letter and your word against his sons. We have more than that, Nathaniel said. We have Sister Agnes at the convent. She kept copies of everything. 5 other women, all with the same story, and we have the convent's financial records showing $50,000 from Blackwood, paid the same month Catherine made her first complaint. Cole nodded slowly. That might be enough. If I can get Sister Agnes to testify, if those other women will come forward. He looked at Catherine. You understand what you are asking for? If this goes to trial, your life will be examined in detail. They will try to destroy your character, make you seem like a temptress, a liar. Are you prepared for that? I am prepared to be believed. Finally, that is all I have ever wanted. Cole stood, extended his hand. Then I will help you, but it will take time. Months, maybe. You will need somewhere safe to stay, somewhere Blackwood cannot reach you. We have a place, Nathaniel said, thinking of the high mountain valleys, the Blackfoot land where white man's law held less sway. We will wait, however long it takes. They left Helena with Cole's promise to investigate, to gather evidence, to build a case. It was not victory, but it was hope, and hope, they had learned, was sometimes enough. Spring came late to Montana Territory in 1888. The snow melted slowly, revealing the blackened ruins of Nathaniel's cabin like a scar on the mountainside. They did not rebuild there. Instead, they moved higher, to a box canyon the Blackfoot called Spirit Valley, where the water ran clear and the hunting was good. They built a new cabin, smaller than the first but solid. This one had 2 rooms, a root cellar, and windows that faced south to catch the sun. Catherine learned to tan hides, to preserve meat, to read the weather in the shape of clouds. Nathaniel taught her everything Sarah had never lived long enough to learn. At night, they sat by the fire, and he told stories of his years alone, and she told stories of the convent, of the girls she had taught, of the life she had lost. They were building something new from the wreckage of what had been. In May, a rider came. Not Mary Whitehorse this time, but a young Blackfoot named Running Deer, carrying a letter sealed with the mark of the U.S. Marshal's office. The trial was set for June. Marshal Cole had done his work. Sister Agnes had come forward, bringing her secret records. 4 of the 5 other women had agreed to testify, their courage growing when they learned they were not alone. The convent's financial ledgers had been subpoenaed. Damien Blackwood and Father Cornelius were under federal indictment for conspiracy, assault, and fraud. But there was more. The letter explained that Catherine would need to testify, would need to stand in a courtroom and recount, in detail, what had been done to her. The defense would question her, would try to break her, would call her character into doubt. Catherine read the letter 3 times, her hands shaking. Then she folded it carefully and looked at Nathaniel. I have to go back. We have to go back. Nathaniel, you do not have to do this. You have already risked everything. And I will risk it again. You do not walk into that courtroom alone, not now, not ever. They arrived in Helena 2 weeks before the trial. Marshal Cole had arranged lodging at a boarding house run by a widow named Mrs. Abernathy, who asked no questions and kept a shotgun behind the counter. Catherine spent her days preparing with a lawyer Cole had found, a sharp-faced woman named Margaret Thorne, who specialized in defending the indefensible and prosecuting the powerful. They will try to make you seem like a seductress, Margaret explained during one of their sessions. They will ask about your clothing, your behavior, anything they can use to suggest you invited attention. You must remain calm. You must tell the truth plainly. and you must not let them see you break. I will not break, Catherine said. I have already survived the worst they can do. The trial began on a Monday in mid-June. The courtroom was packed, standing room only. People had come from all over the territory, drawn by scandal and spectacle. Silas Blackwood sat in the front row, dressed in an expensive suit, his face carved from stone. Damien sat beside him, thinner than Catherine remembered, his eyes hollow. Father Cornelius sat on the other side, his priest collar bright white against his black robe. The judge was a man named Hiram Stone, 60 years old, with a reputation for fairness and a hatred of corruption. He had been appointed by the federal government specifically because he owed nothing to local powers. The prosecution went first. Margaret Thorne laid out the case methodically. She presented Catherine's journal, authenticated by handwriting experts. She presented Sister Agnes, who testified about the payments from Silas Blackwood, about the systematic silencing of complaints, about the culture of fear in the convent. Then she called the other victims. One by one they took the stand. Young women, some still wearing habits, others dressed in plain clothes. Each told the same story with different details. Damien Blackwood had assaulted them. Father Cornelius had covered it up. The convent had chosen money over justice. The courtroom was silent except for the sound of weeping, not from the witnesses, who delivered their testimony with brittle courage, but from the gallery, where mothers and sisters and wives sat listening, recognizing in these stories the shape of their own fears. On the third day, Catherine took the stand. Margaret Thorne led her through her testimony carefully. Name, background, how she came to be at the convent. Then slowly the assaults. Catherine spoke clearly, without emotion, reciting dates and times like she was reading from a ledger. May 13th, 1885. June 20th, 1885. August 3rd, 1885. 11 times spread over 3 years. Each time reported, each time dismissed. When Margaret finished, Damien's lawyer stood. His name was Clarence Whitmore, and he was expensive. He had been brought in from San Francisco specifically to defend Silas Blackwood's interests. Miss Morrison, he began, his voice smooth as oil, or should I say Sister Catherine? I am confused about which title you prefer. I renounced my vows. Miss Morrison is fine. I see. So you broke a sacred promise to God. Would you say you are a woman who keeps her word? Objection, Margaret said. Relevance? I am establishing the witness's character, Your Honor. Overruled. But get to your point, Mr. Whitmore. Miss Morrison, is it not true that you were engaged to Damien Blackwood before you entered the convent? No, that is a lie. Whitmore produced a document. This is a marriage certificate dated April 1884. It bears both your signature and Mr. Blackwood's. That signature is forged. I never signed such a document. Or perhaps you signed it and then changed your mind. Perhaps you used the convent as an escape from a promise you regretted making. I never made such a promise. Whitmore circled closer. You claim my client assaulted you 11 times, yet you never went to the civil authorities. Only to Father Cornelius, who you claim was complicit. Why not go to the marshal? Why not seek help outside the convent? Because Father Cornelius told me I would not be believed. Because Damien Blackwood's father owned the marshal, the judge, the town. Because I was a woman in a nun's habit claiming a rich man's son was a rapist. Who would believe me? Perhaps no one believed you because you were lying. Catherine's hands gripped the witness box. Her knuckles went white, but her voice remained steady. I am not lying. I have never lied. I wrote everything down because I knew this day might come. I knew I would have to prove myself to men like you, men who cannot imagine that a woman might tell the truth. You speak of truth, Miss Morrison, but is it not true that on the night you fled the convent, you were seen in Damien Blackwood's rooms willingly by multiple witnesses? I was dragged there. I fought. I scratched his face and ran. That is why I jumped off a cliff rather than let him take me. Or perhaps you went willingly, had a lover's quarrel, and fabricated this entire story to avoid the consequences of your own shameful behavior. Before Catherine could respond, there was a commotion at the back of the courtroom. A woman stood pushing through the crowd. She was older, perhaps 50, dressed in widow's black. That is a lie, she called out. I saw what happened that night. I saw him drag her. Judge Stone banged his gavel. Order, who are you, madam? My name is Elizabeth Halloway. I work at the convent, cleaning and cooking. I saw Mr. Blackwood force Sister Catherine into his carriage. I saw her fight. I saw him strike her. And I said nothing because Father Cornelius told me I would lose my position if I spoke. Your Honor, Whitmore protested, this witness has not been sworn. Then let us swear her in, Judge Stone said. Bailiff, administer the oath. Elizabeth Halloway took the stand. Her testimony was damning. She had seen everything. The assaults, the payments, the systematic cover-up. She had kept silent for years, terrified of losing her livelihood. But hearing Catherine's courage had given her own courage wings. When she finished, Whitmore had no questions. What question could he ask? The trial continued for 2 more days. The defense called character witnesses for Damien, prominent men who spoke of his charity, his good works, his family's contributions to the territory. But their words rang hollow against the mounting evidence. On the final day, Marshal Ethan Cole took the stand. He presented the financial records. $50,000 from Silas Blackwood to the convent, dated 2 weeks after Catherine's first complaint. Another $20,000 to the territorial governor's office, another $30,000 to various judges and officials. This is a pattern, Cole said, his voice hard. Silas Blackwood bought not just silence, but an entire system. He purchased the right for his son to commit crimes with impunity. That is not justice. That is tyranny. Silas Blackwood stood, his face purple with rage. This is a travesty. You cannot prove. Sit down, Mr. Blackwood, Judge Stone said, or I will hold you in contempt. Silas sat, but his eyes promised violence. The closing arguments were brief. Margaret Thorne spoke of justice delayed, of women's voices finally being heard, of the courage it took to stand against power. Whitmore spoke of doubt, of the need for certainty, of the danger of believing accusations without absolute proof. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. When they returned, the foreman was a rancher named Peterson. Weathered and honest, Judge Stone asked for the verdict. On the charge of conspiracy to commit assault, we find the defendant Damien Blackwood guilty. On the charge of assault, we find him guilty. On the charge of fraud, we find him guilty. The courtroom erupted. Some cheered, others wept. Silas Blackwood sat frozen, his empire crumbling around him. Order! Judge Stone's gavel cracked like a gunshot. Mr. Blackwood, you are hereby sentenced to 20 years in the territorial prison. Father Cornelius, you are stripped of your ecclesiastical authority and sentenced to 10 years. And Silas Blackwood, Stone looked at the older man with something like pity. You are charged with conspiracy and bribery. Your trial will commence in 3 weeks. As the bailiffs moved to take Damien into custody, he did something that would echo through the years. He pulled a knife from his boot, a thin blade no longer than his palm. The bailiffs had checked for pistols, not knives. Montana courtrooms in 1888 were less careful than they should have been. He lunged not at the bailiffs, not at the judge, but at Catherine. He moved fast, desperation lending speed. But Nathaniel moved faster. He had been sitting in the gallery, alert as always. He vaulted the rail, put himself between the blade and Catherine. The knife caught him in the shoulder, slid along the bone. He grunted, grabbed Damien's wrist, twisted until something cracked. The knife fell. Bailiffs swarmed them both. Catherine screamed. She pushed through the crowd, fell to her knees beside Nathaniel. Blood soaked his shirt. Sartre, but he was conscious, gripping her hand. I'm all right, he said, through clenched teeth. It is not deep. Marshal Cole helped them to the doctor's office across the street. The wound was painful, but not life-threatening. The knife had missed anything vital. Catherine stayed with him while the doctor stitched it closed, her hand never leaving his. You keep saving me, she said softly, and you keep being worth saving. She laughed then, a sound of pure relief. We did it. We actually did it. No, you did it. You stood up. You spoke. I just stood beside you. In the days that followed, the full scope of Silas Blackwood's corruption came to light. Federal investigators descended on Montana territory, following the money, uncovering a network of bribes and extortion that stretched from mining camps to the governor's mansion. Silas Blackwood was sentenced to 15 years. His empire was dismantled, sold at auction, the proceeds used to fund schools and orphanages. Father Cornelius was defrocked. The Bishop of Montana issued a formal apology to Catherine and the other victims, though words felt thin compensation for years of suffering. The convent was placed under new management. A council of nuns led by Sister Agnes, who vowed that never again would money matter more than mercy. Chapter 10. The Return to the Mountain. They left Helena in July, riding north toward the high country. Catherine wore a simple dress, her hair unbound, her face tilted toward the sun. She looked like a woman who had shed a great weight, like someone learning to breathe again. They stopped first in Redemption Falls. The town had changed. With the Blackwood money gone, half the businesses had closed. People moved away, seeking opportunities elsewhere. But those who remained seemed quieter, humbler. The violence had taught them something about the cost of looking away. They visited Jacob Freeman's grave. It was in the town cemetery, a simple stone marker next to his daughter Emma's. Someone, probably Mary Whitehorse, had left wildflowers. Nathaniel knelt, placed his hand on the stone. "We did it, Jacob," she testified. They believed her. "It is done." Catherine knelt beside him. "Thank you," she whispered to the stone. "Thank you for choosing courage when it would have been easier to choose silence." They rode on, climbing higher into the mountains. The burned cabin was still there, a skeleton of charred timber. They did not linger. Instead, they continued to Spirit Valley, to the new cabin they had built, to the life that waited. But they were not alone. When they crested the ridge overlooking their home, they saw smoke rising from the chimney. Horses in the corral. People. Nathaniel's hand went to his rifle, but Catherine touched his arm. "Wait, look." A banner hung over the door, crude letters painted on canvas. "Welcome home." Mary Whitehorse stood on the porch grinning. Behind her, Standing Bear and a dozen Blackfoot people. And beside them, to Nathaniel's shock, Mrs. Abernathy from the boarding house. Margaret Thorne the lawyer, even Marshal Ethan Cole. They dismounted, overwhelmed. Mary came forward, embraced Catherine, then Nathaniel. "We could not let you come back to an empty house," she said. "We all owed you a debt. For being brave when we were afraid, for standing when we sat, for speaking when we were silent." Inside, the cabin had been transformed. Furniture they had not owned, supplies they had not bought, books, blankets, tools, gifts from people who understood that justice had a cost, and those who paid it deserved more than gratitude. Standing Bear raised a cup. "To Nate Bishop and Catherine Morrison. May your mountain be blessed with peace. May your days be long. May the story you tell your children be one of courage." They feasted that night, 20 people crammed into a cabin built for two. Stories were told, songs sung. Catherine laughed more than Nathaniel had ever heard her laugh, the sound bright and free. He watched her across the firelight, this woman who had survived what should have destroyed her, and felt his chest tighten with something that was definitely love. When the guests finally left, riding down the mountain by torch and moonlight, Nathaniel and Catherine stood on the porch in the silence. The stars were infinite above them, hard and bright in the thin mountain air. "What happens now?" Catherine asked. "Now we live, we build, we remember the ones who fell so we could stand, and we make it mean something." How do we make it mean something? Nathaniel thought about this. Sister Agnes wants to open a school, a real one, not connected to the church. She asked if you would help teach girls who have nowhere else to go. Give them skills, education, a way to stand on their own. Catherine turned to him. "What did you tell her?" "I told her it was your decision, but that I thought it would be good work, important work." "And you? What would you do while I teach?" "Build. The school will need buildings. The students will need shelter. I know how to work wood, how to make things that last. We could do this together, not just for us, but for the ones who come after." She smiled, slow and warm. "A school on a mountain, teaching girls to be strong. I like it. It would mean people, noise, responsibility, the opposite of the solitude I have had. Do you want the solitude back?" He looked at her, this woman who had changed everything. "No, I want this. I want you. I want to build something that outlasts us both." She kissed him then, gentle and deep, a promise made without words. When they went inside, it was not to sleep, but to celebrate being alive, being together, being free. Chapter 11. 2 years later. The school took 2 years to build. They called it Freeman's Academy, after Jacob, the man who had died so others could stand. It sat on a plateau below Nathaniel's cabin, accessible by a winding trail but remote enough to offer safety. 4 buildings, a classroom, a dormitory, a workshop, and a clinic. Catherine taught reading, writing, arithmetic. but also practical skills, how to keep accounts, how to recognize a legal document, how to defend yourself physically and legally. Mary Whitehorse taught Blackfoot medicine, traditional healing. Margaret Thorne came twice a year to teach law. The students were girls from all over the territory, orphans, runaways, victims of violence. They came broken and left whole. In the summer of 1889, Nathaniel and Catherine married. Not in a church, but on the mountain, with Standing Bear officiating according to Blackfoot tradition. Mary Whitehorse stood as witness. So did Sister Agnes, now simply Agnes, running a reformed convent that had become a refuge rather than a prison. The ceremony was simple. They exchanged vows they had written themselves, promises about truth, freedom, and choosing each other every day. When Standing Bear pronounced them married, he did it in two languages, English and Blackfoot, binding them not just legally but spiritually to the land that had saved them both. That winter, Catherine discovered she was pregnant. The news terrified her. She thought of Sarah, dying in this same mountain cabin, blood and agony and loss. But Nathaniel held her, reminded her that this was not Sarah's story. This was theirs. "We have Mary's medicine," he said. "We have knowledge Sarah did not have. We have time to prepare, and we have each other." The baby came in March of 1890 during a late snowstorm. The labor was long but not dangerous. Mary Whitehorse attended, along with Agnes, who had learned midwifery from necessity. Nathaniel paced outside, remembering another birth, another storm, another woman's screams. But when the baby finally came, healthy and loud, Catherine lived. She was exhausted, in pain, but alive, gloriously alive. They named the boy Jacob. He had his mother's green eyes and his father's stubborn jaw. He would grow up on the mountain, learning to read tracts and books with equal facility. He would know two languages, two cultures, two ways of seeing the world, and he would know his family's story, the truth of it, not the sanitized version people preferred to tell. Chapter 12, The Final Revelation. The old man paused in his telling. The fire had burned down to coals, casting red light across the cabin walls. Daniel sat transfixed, his young face illuminated by the dying glow. "That baby," Daniel said slowly. "Jacob, that was my father." Nathaniel nodded. "Your father, born in March 1890, named for the man who saved us both. And he died not knowing the story. Why did you never tell him?" "I tried. When he was young, he did not want to hear about the past. He wanted to be modern, sophisticated. The war years, they made him hard. Made him focus on the present, on survival. And then he was gone, and I never got another chance." Nathaniel rose stiffly, walked to the window. Outside, snow was still falling. "There is more to tell," he said. "The final part, the part that brings us to today." He returned to his chair, picked up the photograph of Catherine in her habit. After Jacob was born, after the school was running well, Catherine wanted to do more. She opened a clinic down in the valley, offering free medical care to miners, homesteaders, Blackfoot people, anyone who needed it. She used everything Mary had taught her, everything she had learned from books, everything she had observed in the convent infirmary. She became the best doctor between Helena and Canada, though she had no formal degree. "And you?" "I helped. Built examination rooms, kept the records, raised our son. It was a good life. Not easy, never easy, but good. We had 40 years together, 40 years of choosing each other every single day." Daniel did the math. 40 years from 1887 would be 1927. "But Grandma is still alive. You said she lives in town." "I did, and she does. But you live up here, apart. Why?" Nathaniel smiled, sad and knowing. "Because I am old, Daniel. I am 64. My body is failing. My hands shake. Some days I cannot walk without pain. Catherine, she still has work to do. Still has patients who need her. I will not slow her down. Will not make her choose between caring for the sick and caring for me. So I come here, to the mountain where I have always belonged, and she stays in town where she is needed most. That is not fair. You should be together. We are together in every way that matters. She visits twice a month. I go down when the weather allows. We write letters. We remember. That is enough." "Sid?" Before Nathaniel could answer, there was a sound outside. The crunch of snow under boots, the soft nicker of a horse. Daniel tensed, but Nathaniel smiled. "She is early this month." The door opened. A woman entered, bringing cold air and the smell of pine. She was old, 91 years if Nathaniel's count was right, her hair white, her face lined. But her eyes were still green, still bright, still seeing everything. She moved with the confidence of someone who knew her own strength. "Nate," she said, her voice warm. Then her gaze fell on Daniel. "And you must be Daniel. I would know you anywhere. You have Jacob's eyes." Daniel stood, uncertain. "You are my grandmother?" "I am. Catherine Morrison Bishop, though most people just call me Doc Morrison these days." She moved to Nathaniel, touched his face with weathered hands, kissed his forehead. He leaned into the touch like a plant-seeking sun. "You are telling him the story," she said. "He deserves to know." "Yes, he does." She turned to Daniel. "Your grandfather is too humble. He makes it sound like I was the brave one. But the truth is we saved each other. He gave me safety. I gave him purpose. Together, we built something that outlasted us both." She sat down, accepted the tea Nathaniel poured, and for the next hour she added her perspective to the story. The terror of the trial, the joy of the verdict, the years of building the school, teaching girls to stand, watching them leave strong. 73 students, she said proudly, over 40 years. 73 girls who came to us broken and left whole. Some became teachers, some nurses, some lawyers. One became a territorial representative. They carried our story forward, passed it on. That is legacy. "What happened to the Blackwoods, Ma?" Daniel asked. "Silas died in prison in 1893. Heart attack. Damien served 15 years, got out in 1903, disappeared. We heard rumors he went to California, died in the earthquake of 1906, but we never confirmed it. Father Cornelius lived until 1910, never served his full sentence. He was released early for good behavior. He died alone in a rooming house in Butte. No one came to his funeral. And the others? Mary Whitehorse? Standing Bear?" Catherine's face softened. "Mary died in 1920, pneumonia. We buried her according to Blackfoot tradition, on a platform facing east. Standing Bear lived to be 92. He died in his sleep in 1935, surrounded by his grandchildren. They were good friends, the best kind." She looked at Nathaniel and something passed between them, a conversation conducted entirely in glances. "Daniel," Nathaniel said, "there is something your grandmother and I want to give you." Catherine reached into her coat, pulled out a leather-bound book, old, worn, but carefully preserved. "This is my journal, the one Sister Agnes saved, the one that was evidence at the trial. I have kept it all these years. Now it is yours." She placed it in Daniel's hands. "You will find names in here, dates, details, but more than that, you will find the truth. Not the story people tell, the sanitized version where everything works out neatly, but the messy, painful, real truth. People died, we were hurt, we were scared, but we stood anyway." "Why are you giving this to me?" "Because you are the next generation," Nathaniel said. "Your father died before we could pass this on. But you are here now. You need to know where you come from. You need to know that sometimes the thing that society calls forbidden is not wrong. It is just inconvenient to those in power." Catherine leaned forward. Daniel listened carefully. "What people called forbidden was not me falling in love with your grandfather. It was not breaking my vows. It was not even defying the church. What was forbidden was this: a woman demanding to be treated as human, a man choosing mercy over power, two people building a life based on mutual respect instead of domination. That was the crime. That was the thing that made them so angry they tried to kill us. But you survived. We survived. And more than that, we thrived. We built a school, raised a son, helped out hundreds of people, lived according to our own rules, not theirs. That is the legacy, Daniel. Not survival, but defiance." The old woman stood, moved to the window. Dawn was breaking, painting the snow gold and pink. "I have to go back to town," she said. 3 babies due this month. People need me." She turned back to Nathaniel. "I will see you in 2 weeks?" 2 weeks, I will be here." They embraced, long and close, two people who had shared 40 years of memories and still were not done making new ones. Then Catherine Bishop, 91 years old, walked out into the dawn, mounted her horse, and rode down the mountain to where people waited. Nathaniel watched her until she disappeared into the trees. Then he looked at Daniel. "Your grandmother is 91 years old. She has delivered over 200 babies. She has trained 30 women in medicine. She has saved countless lives. And she does it all because 65 years ago, someone told her she was worthless. She has spent every day since proving them wrong. And you, Grandpa, what did you prove? Nathaniel smiled, that a man can be strong without being cruel, that protecting someone does not mean owning them, that choosing the right thing is harder than choosing the easy thing, but it is always worth it. He placed his hand on the journal Daniel held. Read this, remember it. And when your time comes, when you face the choice between what is right and what is convenient, remember your grandmother standing in that courtroom. Remember Jacob Freeman facing down a mob. Remember that the forbidden thing is usually just the truth, dressed up in fear. Daniel opened the journal, read the first entry. May 13th, 1885. Today he came again. Father Cornelius locked the door. I am so tired of being afraid. He closed it, looked up with tears in his eyes. I will remember, he said. I promise. Epilogue. The mountain remembers. 10 years later, in 1962, Daniel Bishop graduated from medical school. He returned to Montana, opened a clinic in the valley below Spirit Valley. He called it Freeman's Hope, honoring both Jacob Freeman and the legacy his grandparents had built. Nathaniel had died in 1958 at 70. He passed quietly in his sleep on the mountain, in the cabin he had built with his own hands. They buried him next to Sarah and their unnamed son, on the ridge where the morning sun hit first. Catherine lived another 2 years, working until the end. She died in 1960, 99 years old, attending a birth. The baby lived. Catherine slipped away shortly after, satisfied with a job well done. They buried her next to Nathaniel, finally reunited on the mountain they both loved. Freeman's Academy continued, run by the women Catherine had trained. It expanded, became a college, then a university. By the 21st century, it was one of the leading institutions in the country for women's studies, law, and medicine. Every student learned the story of Catherine Morrison and Nathaniel Bishop, the woman who refused to be silent and the man who chose to listen. The journal became part of the university's special collections. Historians studied it. Documentaries featured it. It became required reading in law schools across America as an example of institutional corruption and one woman's fight against it. But for Daniel Bishop, it remained what it had always been, a reminder, a promise, a testament to the fact that sometimes love is not the forbidden thing. Sometimes the forbidden thing is simply the audacity to demand one's own humanity. He kept a photograph of his grandmother in her habit on his desk, and every morning before seeing his first patient, he would look at it and remember. The mountain does not forget. The wind carries stories through the pines. And if you listen carefully on certain nights, you can hear them still. A woman's laughter, bright and free. A man's quiet voice, steady as stone. Two people who chose courage over comfort, truth over safety, love over law. They were told it was forbidden. They did it anyway. And the world changed because they did. The end.